Let me then turn it to my colleague, Mike Bertha, Managing Director of the Central Office for Meta Strategy, also a CIO.com contributor. He's going to be leading a conversation on defining and architecting a new normal. Mike, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Peter. So airlines and commercial real estate, arguably two of the most impacted industries from the events in the past 18 months. This inevitably created new opportunities to become more nimble, but has also led to strategic thinking about how to win in the new normal and how to position for growth once we rebound. With that, I want to welcome Maya Leibman, CIO of American Airlines, and Adam Stanley, Chief Information and Chief Digital Officer of Cushman Wakefield, the global real estate firm. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Well,
all right. Maya, I can report that I am indeed traveling this week by plane. I'm also a proud executive platinum member at AA for about the last 10 years.
And have you memorized your advantage number?
Oh, yeah.
I have. But what I really wanted to say is I really like the new turkey Reuben sandwich you guys started serving.
Yes, food is back for some of our customers for sure.
All right, Maya. Well, I'm just going to start with you because I'm traveling via plane today. One of the key themes in Peter's recent book, Getting to Nimble, is people. So the need to cultivate a culture that is both high performing and diverse is extremely important for growth. I was wondering if you could kick us off by talking a little bit about your people strategy at American Airlines, specifically honing in on recruiting, DE&I, and talent development in today's environment.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, like everybody else, we're feeling that war for talent. Previously we really only had to compete with other companies in the same sort of metro area. But now that so many other companies are offering, fully remote work, there's a whole new set of competitors out there for our talent and for getting in new talent. And we care about that. We care about having a strong technical workforce. And so, I would say our strategy really runs the gamut, everything from traditional recruiting to sort of new approaches to finding new talent. Like we've been sponsoring hackathons with organizations like Black Enterprise that are doing these hackathons with HBCUs. So this helps us not only identify talent, get to work with them a little bit, and also attract them to American, but also improve our diversity. And then as well, upskilling our own team by providing really intentional and planned learning journeys as we look for everyone to sort of step up in their technical acumen. I'll talk about one of the more interesting things that we did because it just happened this week and I'm super excited about it. But like 4 years ago, we became a partner with the Dallas Independent School District on their early college program that they do in a bunch of high schools around the city. So in this program, we work with a local high school and freshmen are selected and they're put through this more intense academic program with some of their classes taught by the local community college professors. So that by the time they graduate, they're doing so not just with their high school diploma, but also their 2-year associate's degree. So like a community college degree, which essentially they get for free. So in our program, the additional courses that they took revolved around software development and PC support, other things within technology. And now 4 years later, these students are seniors. And just this past week was the first day of their summer internship. We hired several seniors and some juniors for a summer internship, about 7 of them. And it was awesome to see them here after 4 years of working on this program. And after the summer for the seniors, we're going to provide them part-time opportunities so that they can continue to work with us as well as pursue a traditional 4-year college program. And because this school is really in an underserved, largely Hispanic neighborhood, and we ensured at the beginning that the class was 50-50 male-female, we can simultaneously improve our diverse pipeline as well as help really sort of, disrupt this cycle of under-earning that these families in this neighborhood have traditionally faced. And I think, we started this whole thing because we realized that there are kids out there that have an attitude and they have the aptitude for technology and for having great, long, illustrious careers in technology. They have just lacked the opportunity. And we feel really fortunate to have been able to provide that.
Thanks for sharing. So I'm going to go over to you, Adam. I remember when we initially talked, I told you I was considering taking a luxury bus, a company called Von Lane, for an upcoming trip from Dallas to Houston instead of a plane. I wanted to update you and say I have not tried it yet, and it's pretty awkward having this conversation while Maya's on the line.
I'm glad to hear it.
So speaking of awkward, we recently spoke with a CIO at another global real estate firm. They referenced a recent study that concluded remote work is here to stay. 85% of respondents plan to work remote at least 2 days a week in the new normal. So I wanted to know how you're thinking about the future of work at Cushman and Wakefield, and to what extent does the physical office play a role in the growth and strategy of your company in the new normal?
Sure, I'll take that. But first, I just want to make clear to Maya, because I depend on American Airlines. I am concierge key, and I absolutely know my advantage number by heart.
That's awesome. I hate to tell you, Mike, but CK trumps EP, but we value all of our elite customers.
Wow, I'm embarrassed.
Well, and I didn't take the bus, but here's the thing. I think what's fascinating to me is that we keep hearing. There's a movie that I've watched multiple times, Back to the Future. It's hilarious. Alex P. Keaton. And I think that so much of what we talk about as CIOs and in corporate in general is kind of back to the future. There are studies now that say that 85% of workers are working, want to work 1 to 2 days remotely. There were studies 20 years ago that 85% of workers wanted to work remotely 1 to 2, and 20 years from now it'll be the same. And I think that the first thing I would say is that the concept of flexibility in work has always been important, and frankly, it's going to only increase as we try to diversify our industry, because Maya talked a lot about certain communities in inner city Dallas. A lot of those communities have single parent households that don't have the luxury of kind of having the choice of whether to work and the daycare opportunities. So that flexibility that comes with remote working will only help us with our goals to diversify our employee bases, and so it's going to continue. That said, of course, the other thing that continues is there have been as many studies that talk about the fact that collaboration is enabled when people can get together in rooms and with beanbag chairs and hacky sack and video games and whiteboards, and they can collaborate and they can come up with ideas. And so both of those forces are things that have been and will remain in our environment, and so they'll play. And then, of course, the service economy in general continues to grow, so that there are more people that are actually entering the service economy. So what we're seeing is that the percentage of days people, or the percentage of workforces that are wholly remote, it's kind of causing certain people to leave the office, but at the same time, there are a lot more people returning to the office and a lot more people actually going into office jobs. So it's an interesting thing. The most important thing I would say is companies need to stop talking about it as if it's a binary choice. You're either a remote worker, or you're a home worker, or you're a flex worker, or you're always in the office, and really change the conversation to where are you, based on your particular job and your particular team in your particular industry, best served? Where are you most productive? And most importantly, where are you happiest? Because competition for talent, as Maya alluded to, is just increasing. And you want people to be happy and you want them to be productive. So I think that I'll give you one example. There's a superstar in my team who was absolutely productive throughout the lockdown, throughout COVID, working remote. But the second she can come back into the office, she's like, oh my God, I am there Monday because I'm so tired of my kids and my dog being in all of my meetings. I'm so tired of this, and so they're back. And then there's another one that's saying, hey, I've been productive for a year. I'm never coming back to the office. And I want to keep both of them.
All right. So Maya, I'm going to come back to you. I'm sure many people are wondering, what was the rationale for choosing turkey over corned beef on your Reuben?
People like a lighter kind of lunch. Corned beef can be a little bit heavy, a little bit fatty. I'm surprised that you even eat corned beef, Mike. I mean,
all right. So jokes aside, I don't really have to rally off statistics here. I think everyone knows that the airline industry was hit really hard in the last 18 months. I'm wondering if you could talk about how American Airlines reacted to that demand shock, and then how you planned for the new normal, recognizing that the timeline to returning to normalcy was very much unknown.
Yeah, I think like everybody, we were, surprised at what was happening, and we had to react really quickly. If you had told me before March of last year that one of my top priorities was to create a self-service check-in machine experience where the customer didn't actually have to touch the machine, I would have said that's not in the top 100 things that I would have expected us to be working on in terms of the customer experience. But it became like the top priority as soon as COVID happened, and everybody was really focused on safety and hygiene and what we touched and what we didn't touch. And so there was a lot of very fast pivoting. I think one of the things that I really enjoyed about the early days of the pandemic was just how willing people were to make really fast decisions. You keep talking about food on the aircraft. For a while we took food off in the interest of the safety of our customers and our flight attendants. And, normally that would be like an 8-month decision. Should we do it? Let's do all the analysis around it. Let's get all the stakeholders. Let's decide what we're doing. Let's, figure out how we're going to execute it. Like in 3 days, we had all food off the aircraft. And so it was kind of a really sort of fun and invigorating environment to work in, where you're making really big decisions really, really quickly. And that's really sort of how we worked throughout the pandemic.
Thank you. Adam, similar to airlines, real estate was particularly hit hard. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how your digital strategy evolved in the past year, from responding to the new impact to preparing, and then now living in the new normal. I wonder if anything significant pops out in your mind.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, and this is important for us, we have roughly 20 to 25,000 of our employees who continue to work every day in an office for the last year. And so the interesting thing about our industry is real estate is both the buying and selling, leasing of buildings, but it's also the cleaning, the securing. And so the first thing that was interesting for us is the concept of frontline workers. We never really thought of ourselves as ever having, frontline workers before, but in the COVID battle, a lot of our workers were the ones that were trying to help keep the airports clean and safe, and to keep the buildings that people were walking through. So we had quite a few essential workers, and kind of shout out to them, because they didn't have the luxury of an option of working from home. And a lot of them were non-tech enabled. So one of the first challenges that we had was, how do you communicate with all of these non-tech enabled workers that are so essential? And there's such a huge amount of information that's flying on a regular basis. So that was a challenge that we had to address. How do you get messages out? So the use of kiosks and different creative ways of sharing information with your janitors and your engineers and your maintenance folks. To Maya's point, you didn't have weeks or months to address this, so you found it right away. The other thing was, of course, how do you attest, and how do you actually build those tools for making sure that people that come into the office are, attesting that they don't have the symptoms, and that their temperatures are not 100.4 degrees and all these other things. And so I think the first thing that was interesting is how CIOs out there were suddenly like talking to doctors, my new bestie, Dr. Tuggy, our international SOS partner who talked to us about how to deal with COVID. So those were some of the first learnings. And then it was the blessing for us was the fact that a lot of the work that we had suspected we needed to do, we had invested in, but we actually didn't get people using those tools until COVID. So for instance, how do you show property when you can't actually go out with a client and walk through a property? Well, luckily, we have built digital tour books and we've built tools to virtually do site selection. And so to some extent, it was a great opportunity to kind of test those things that we had already thought were eventually going to be important, but COVID kind of accelerated their importance. And I think that's going to continue because now, as we advance beyond it, we now have kind of citizen technologists out there that are now bragging about all the stuff that they can do. And instead of thinking of it as how do I handle my current 2 clients during COVID, they're thinking, how can I use it to scale to 10 clients post-COVID, where I prioritize who I actually go out with in person and who I actually have a more virtual interaction with. And so I think it's going to be as horrible as the year was for so many reasons. It's going to be a huge boon, I think, for a lot of the digital tools in the real estate space. And it's going to jumpstart some of the change that frankly should have happened years ago, and it'll continue. So, as ironic and horrible as it sometimes sounds, it's possibly the greatest case for change that we could have ever not dreamed of or wanted, but we're certainly able to leverage it.
Wow, that's great. Well, Maya and Adam, I really appreciate having you guys join us today.